Hi, I'm Micah Clark. Thank you for joining us this week. I want to talk about what happened in the Indiana General Assembly this week. At first, I thought it was going to be kind of a quiet week. It didn't end up that way. In the middle of the week on Wednesday, a bill that we've been expecting for a while that's you would think would be one of the more controversial bills of the session, House Bill 1041, really isn't, even though there's a lot of smoke and fire around it. This is an 80-20 issue. This is the girls' sports bill, protecting girls' sports at the collegiate level. We've talked about this many times. Literally, the polling is almost 80% of people, and probably that's national polling, and maybe even higher than that in Indiana. Hoosiers do not want men in girls' locker rooms, in girls' competitive sports, taking away scholarships, titles, and medals from girls. It's just not fair. In fact, we call this the Fairness in Girls Sports Act, and I think that's very appropriate to call it that. But the Senate Education Committee took up a hearing on that bill on Wednesday. They'll vote on it next week, take amendments and vote. There won't be any amendments, I don't think. There'll be amendments offered. I don't believe there'll be any amendments adopted. And I expect the bill will fly out of that committee on a party line vote. I'm a little surprised. The Democrats seem to have locked up on this in opposition to it. All the trans activists, all the mentally confused trans people showed up and testified, and some others. Well over an hour and a half testimony. But I thought our side did quite well with Alliance Defending Freedom. A local attorney who's represented Riley Gaines did an outstanding job, and several people who were athletes, several ladies, talking about what happened to them. One lady in particular told a story that she was going to San Jose State on a volleyball scholarship. When she got there, she found out that scholarship wasn't going to happen, but it was too late for her to transfer. She really wanted to play volleyball. She got on the team, and the person who took her scholarship was a guy, and the coach was expecting her to do as well as this tall guy who was much more powerful, could jump more. And the worst part of it was, not only did he take her scholarship, playing the same position she was playing, she had to change clothes with him in the locker room, and that was just wrong. She had a very powerful testimony about that. But again, I think that bill is going to fly out. There might be one or two Democrats who vote for this. There were 3 in the House that did. Majority of Democrats in polling support protecting girls' sports, but there's so much power among the Democrat base. And to their credit, I will say, the Democrat Party does not offend or walk away from its base very often. Republicans kind of do that more often, and it's frustrating. But this is an issue where I think the Republicans have realized this is the right thing to do, and the polling is strongly behind them. So I expect 1041 will come out of committee next week, and then on Thursday they'll adopt the committee report. The following week they'll take floor amendments and they'll vote on it in third reading. And my guess is this bill will go straight to the governor. I expect the governor will sign House Bill 1041. But you never know. I can't predict anything, what can happen. But I feel really good about House Bill 1041, the Fairness in Girls Sports Act. Now, another bill I want to mention, and that is one that was kind of on our radar. I'm going to get to this next. Senate Bill 326 was amended this week. I think I talked about this before, but there was a bill that was filed by Representative Bruce Borders, strong pro-family advocate, on drag shows being hosted by city officials, city government, using taxpayer dollars for that would block that. The bill wasn't heard, but it got a lot of attention. And Representative Chris Jeter, who's chairman of the Judiciary Committee, took language like that and amended it into Senate Bill 326, which was a bill in the Corrections Committee and Courts and Criminal Code Committee, I believe it is, and added this. I wanted to read this to you. Simply says, a governmental entity may not knowingly or intentionally organize or host an obscene performance or fund in whole or in part an obscene performance with public funds. A very simple amendment. Obscenity has always been illegal. Obscenity is defined pretty well. You may hear, what is pornography? That's hard to define. Obscenity is pretty specific in our law, and I think this is a wonderful amendment. Tax dollars shouldn't go something like this, and tax property shouldn't be used to host obscene performances. So that bill actually passed out of committee 13-0. Now, I think there's going to be some tricks pulled on Monday regarding this amendment where you may see some changes to it offered by some of the more liberal members of the House. But I think this bill, at the end of the day, I believe this amendment will stay in. It's really hard to justify taking this out. And the bill is a Crimes Against Children bill. And that's the title of it. It's going to be very hard for anybody to vote against a Crimes Against Children bill. So brilliant move by Representative Borders and Representative Jeter on this. And so I'm very encouraged about Senate Bill 326. And that's a big win for pro-family values to protect kids and the public from obscenity and from funding obscenity in public places. So that's 326. Now, the last bill is very complex. I did an alert on this yesterday afternoon. You may have read it. And it's concerning a bill regarding marijuana or hemp products. Now, marijuana and hemp are not exactly the same. Hemp is used for clothing traditionally. It was used for rope. George Washington even grew hemp. He wasn't using it for drugs. We used to make rope out of hemp hundreds of years ago. Actually, hemp has not been a very big product in the last 50 years. But it's making a comeback because it's connected to marijuana legalization. And hemp products do contain THC, which is the component which makes people high. And so there are people who are extracting that from hemp. And what's happening from the advocates of this bill in the Senate and the House is you have hemp products in a lot of gas stations and other places with low levels of THC being sold. It's totally unregulated. And the authors of this bill who I've spoken to want to keep this out of the hands of children, and they want to regulate hemp products. Now, you could step back from that and say, look, if this is bad for children, why do we allow it all? Because, and I would argue just ban all of it, because when you allow something for adults, kids get it. States that legalize marijuana do not allow that for kids under 21, and yet they have the highest youth rates of any states. The states that legalize marijuana have higher use rates of marijuana. So when you make it more accessible to adults, kids get a hold of it. So, but saying that aside, if we're going to have hemp products, and there's people who think there's things about hemp seeds and other things that don't contain THC that might be in health food stores. I have no problem with hemp products if we're going to do that. I don't think it's the miracle cash crop. Farmers aren't flocking to it. It's a niche thing, but be that as it may, there is a problem with some hemp products contain THC. So this regulates that. And it came out of the Senate on a 40-9 vote. And sometimes when I see a 40-9 vote, I think, well, that must be a party line vote. You kind of have the left on one side, the right on the other. That didn't happen in the Senate. It was all over the place. But the 9 people who voted against it were more conservative Republicans, many of whom I'm very good friends with and work closely with. So that made me wonder about this bill. The second thing that happened, even more importantly, was when this bill was heard yesterday in committee, some advocates for marijuana legalization, some legislators in the House, one in particular from Kokomo, offered 2 amendments. And when that happened, the Indiana Prosecutors Association went from neutral to opposing the bill. That was a big red flag for me because the prosecutors, police departments are concerned about marijuana, about THC and the proliferation of that, traffic safety, things that we have with that. So I got a call from several legislators saying, hey, I think this bill is not what it was intended to be. I think this might be a step towards making marijuana type products more available, or a step towards legalization. Legalization often happens incrementally. And so I did that alert. And I know it was a little confusing. This is an 87-page bill. I've read it a couple times. I've looked at the amendments. I don't fully understand what's being done here. There's a lot of high technological, medical things in this. But I just want to tell you, the alert that went out yesterday, those of you who responded, who contacted your state rep, that is being heard. There are concerns about this bill now. My purpose for that alert wasn't necessarily to kill the bill outright, but to get some more eyes on it in the legislature, to let them know. Because if you're not on that committee, legislators are doing so much. You got 11 or 13 people on a committee. You've got another 87 legislators who are doing all these other things. I wanted to let them know this bill could be a problem. Please take a look at this. And it concerns us, it concerns people. That message has gotten through pretty well to a lot of legislators. And I think you might see some amendments on this on Monday to make this maybe more like what the Senate passed. At least that's my hope. But that's Senate Bill 478 regarding craft hemp flowers. It was not a bill that I was watching, and it wasn't an issue until the amendments came up this week in committee that changed it, and several key legislators who I'm close to voted no. And I talked to them and heard their concerns and expressed those concerns in the alert yesterday. But so sometimes issues come up, we're not really on our radar, and I felt like it was worth sending an email out just to let you know what we're watching, what we're doing, and that we have a concern about this bill and how it could affect children, traffic safety, addiction issues, mental health, things like that. So we'll watch that. We'll see what happens. We'll see what they do with it next week in amendments, and I'll keep you informed in that through our weekly email on Wednesdays. So that's Senate Bill 478. The other bill I mentioned today was House Bill 1041, the Fairness in Girls Sports Act. I believe we're in good shape on that. We'll see what they do on Wednesday when the committee takes amendments and votes. And then the week after that, we'll probably see floor amendments and a final vote. And I'm sure the media will pick up on that bill because it's the type of issue they like to talk about. And then the other bill, Senate Bill 326, a offenses or crimes against children bill that was a good bill to start with concerning child pornography, and was amended to include some obscenity language that we very much support. So it would be helpful if you called your House member about Senate Bill 326 and asked them to support this bill. That will give it some momentum, and that will help ensure, I think, that the amendment stays in. I think it's going to be very interesting if there is an amendment offered to remove the obscenity language. I hope a roll call vote happens because I want to know what legislators support obscenity and support your tax dollars going to help obscene performances. I don't want that amendment to come out, but the political side of me would love to see a roll call vote on that to expose people who will not protect children who are elected officials. So that is Senate Bill 326. Well, I want to say thank you for joining us today. We'll see what happens next week, but several important things happen this week. And as we get closer, as I've said before, you'll hear more about property taxes and the budget. And though we're not deeply involved in that, I know it's an issue of concern. So I'm trying to stay on top of where your legislature is going with property taxes and some budget funding issues. But appreciate your support, appreciate you reading my emails, and appreciate you taking action when we do a call to action in those weekly emails or alerts. And I appreciate you for watching these videos on Friday. I'm Micah Clark with American Family Association of Indiana. Have a wonderful weekend.